Hello, good evening from the IOC Olympic House, and thank you very much for joining us. I think we've got more than 100 people online, so we'll get on as quickly as we can. This is the first of two press briefings from the Executive Board. First day was today. With me, I have James McLeod, Director for NOC Relations and Olympic Solidarity, and Kit McConnell, who's the IOC Sports Director. Before we hear from them, a few updates for you. Received the declaration by IOC against the politicization of sport. You should have already received that. It speaks for itself. I don't think we need to add very much to that. If you have not seen it yet, you will find it on ioc.org. Changes of sporting nationality. I know there are some people who need to know these things, so just let me quickly run through these. The EB today accepted 7 applications for athletes' changes of sporting nationality in view of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Shahrazad Ayachi in wrestling from France to Tunisia. Anastasia Kirpichnikova from swimming from Russia to France. Alexander Komarov, wrestling from Russia to Serbia. Rachel Neylan, cycling from Australia to Ireland. Lisa Pu in swimming from France to Monaco. Lavenia Sim, swimming from USA to Singapore. And finally, Ingrid Simão Sotomayor, gymnastics from Brazil to Portugal. Following the disqualification of 2 athletes from London 2012 weightlifting competitions and the changes of the official results by the IWF, the International Weightlifting Federation, the EB decided to reallocate the medals and diplomas and medalist pins. In the men's plus 105 kilo category at London 2012, the third placed athlete was disqualified by the IWF, and the bronze medal has now been reallocated to Sangwon Jeon from Korea. And then also today, the IOC EB received information from the IOC Ethics Commission related to directives concerning the IOC president election. I'm going to read you the statement which was delivered to the IOC EB by the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, and I'm quoting. The directives are currently being reviewed. As mentioned during the IOC session in Mumbai, the principles which applied during the 2 previous election processes will remain in place. Considering the new media, social media and digital landscape, the text will be updated accordingly. The 2024 version will be finalized by the IOC Ethics Commission during its next institutional meeting before the Olympic summer. The review of these directives is important since there will be an election, as we all know, in 2025, and these rules will have to apply during all future election processes. In relation to the IOC president's decision regarding the election, it is clear that the timing of such a decision may create a high risk of overshadowing the course of the Olympic Games, as well as the election campaign itself. Therefore, in order to protect this election process, it is recommended to the IOC president to postpone any such a decision until the end of the Olympic Games. In the event that the Olympic Charter may need to be amended, this can be organized at any time by a postal vote by the IOC members. End of quote. And that was supported unanimously by all the members of the Executive Board today. And the President, following that, and will follow the proposals of the Commission. And I think that statement speaks for itself. I will not have any further comment to make on that. Okay, so let us now turn to James McLeod. And James, you have a couple of issues you want to tell us about. James.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good afternoon, good evening to everyone that's online. Today, I just wanted to give you an update on the reports that were made specifically related to the eligibility review process for individual neutral athletes with a Russian or a Belarusian passport that the IOC Executive Board looked at, and also a couple of updates on NOC matters, including Guatemala and Afghanistan. It had made back in December last year relating to the participation of international neutral athletes at the Olympic Games in Paris. In particular, first of all, there was an update relating to the sport qualifications for AIN, and there are currently 12 AINs with Russian passports and 7 AINs with Belarusian passports who've qualified for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And this is out of the 6,000 quota places that have already been awarded for the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Our experts currently project that under the most likely scenario, 36 AINs with a Russian passport and 22 AINs with a Belarusian passport will qualify for the Olympic Games Paris 2024. The maximum number, which is unlikely to be reached, would be 55 and 28 respectively. These numbers have to be compared as well to the 330 athletes from the Russian Olympic Committee who took part in the Games in Tokyo, and the 104 athletes from the National Olympic Committee of Belarus that took part in the Tokyo Games. And it's important to note that those are the qualification places, but these are estimates for Paris and do not take into account the IOC eligibility review process that I'll explain to you now. The IOC Executive Board discussed the eligibility review process and agreed to establish an individual neutral athlete eligibility review panel to evaluate the eligibility of each athlete with a Russian or Belarusian passport who obtains or who could obtain a qualification place for the Olympic Games Paris 2024 and that of their support personnel. The panel will be composed of 3 members. Firstly, Ms. Nicole Hoverts, IOC Vice President, will be the chair of the panel. An IOC Ethics Commission representative, Mr. Paul Gasol, and an IOC Athletes Commission representative, Mr. Suming Ryu. The second point the IOC Executive Board agreed to was to delegate to this panel and the IOC administration the authority to invite an individual neutral athlete and their support personnel to participate in the Games. Once the athletes' invitations have been sent, the IOC will publish the list of AIN and their support personnel on a regular basis who have been invited to participate in the Games. The third point to be noted is that the panel will monitor the conduct of and the respect of the principles of participation that were established by the IOC Executive Board in December by all AIN and support personnel who are deemed eligible and who eventually participate in the Olympic Games Paris 2024, including on their return after the Games. The IOC Executive Board also looked at a number of protocol elements with relation to their participation of the AIN in Paris. First of all, a flag for AIN has been approved and an anthem has been approved. The anthem has no lyrics and has been produced solely for the purpose of the AIN in Paris. The IOC EB also agreed the medals won by the AIN would not be displayed on any NOC medal table. In addition, the Paris ceremonies were discussed by the IOC Executive Board, and the following principles were established. AINs will not participate in the parade of delegations teams during the opening ceremony, since they are individual athletes, but an opportunity will be provided to them to experience the event. This is the same scenario that was used for independent Olympic participants at the Olympic Games in Barcelona in 1992 for athletes from the former Yugoslavia. Secondly, a decision regarding the participation of AIN in the closing ceremony in Paris will be taken at a later stage, taking into consideration that not all teams that enter the closing ceremony, but it's more all athletes joining together. Thirdly, during the victory ceremonies, an AIN flag will be flown and the AIN anthem will be played should an AIN athlete win a medal. So that is a summary of the decision that was made relating to the individual neutral athletes. And I will give you now a bit of an update just on some NOC issues that were discussed during the Executive Board. Firstly, relating to the National Olympic Committee of Guatemala that was currently suspended. In the interests of the athletes of Guatemala, and following a number of recent developments in the country and an extraordinary executive General Assembly that was held by the NOC of Guatemala over the weekend, the IOC EB today decided to provisionally lift the suspension of the National Olympic Committee of Guatemala until further notice. This means that the NOC of Guatemala, through its IOC recognized leadership, can operate again as an NOC under the Olympic Charter and according to the IOC-approved NOC statutes of December 2021. And this means that they can prepare for the Olympic Games in Paris 2024. This will allow the athletes of Guatemala to be entered by the IOC-recognized NOC and to compete under their flag and anthem at the Olympic Games and other international multi-sports events as normal. Secondly, the NOC of Afghanistan was discussed at length, and the situation of Afghan sport was discussed at length in the Executive Board. In the framework of the IOC Executive Board decisions that were taken in June 2023 and in December 2022, which stated clear conditions with regard to any support to activities with and continued operations of the Afghan NOC, the IOC has been in continuous dialogue with the Afghan NOC and the Afghan sports authorities, with the aim to reverse the current restrictions on access to sport for women and young girls in Afghanistan. At the same time, Afghan athletes, in particular female athletes, have been regularly benefiting from IOC and Olympic solidarity support to represent their country in international sports competition, including the Asian Games and the upcoming Olympic Games. The IOC Executive Board did recognize the divergent views across the world relating to the suspension or not of the Afghan National Olympic Committee. But it also recognized the fact that the IOC doesn't believe that this isolation of the Afghan sporting community at this time is the right approach. This is based on a number of discussions that we have had with athlete community, Afghan athletes themselves, and in particular, their female athletes, who have asked for us to maintain the dialogue with the Afghan authorities to help to address the situation. In view of this, the IOC Executive Board agreed that everything should be done with the Afghan NOC and the international federations concerned to ensure that the Afghan NOC can send a mixed gender team to the Olympic Games in Paris 2024. The IOC EB confirmed the objective to have that mixed gender team for those games. Those were the two updates, Mark.
Thank you very much, James. Let's move over to Kit. Kit, I know you have an important announcement on boxing and some other key issues. Kit, I want to take it up.
Yes, thank you, Mark and James, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'll start maybe before coming on to boxing, just with an update on the medal reallocation principles that we have in place for Paris. And this is really an athlete-focused initiative, and equally the decisions taken today focus equally on those athletes. You may remember that the medal reallocation principles originally came from the IOC Athletes Commission to provide a real opportunity for those athletes who missed out on receiving a medal at the time of the games in the stadium, and really tried to find a way of giving the athletes themselves the opportunity to choose where and how they would like that medal to be reallocated to them when necessary. That can be an IF event, an NOC event here in Lausanne at the Olympic House, or in a way of the individual athletes choosing. Today, the IOC Executive Board approved the IOC Athletes Commission recommendation to offer the Champions Park during the Olympic Games Paris 2024 as an additional opportunity to that list for the medal reallocation ceremonies, as an exception to the current medal reallocation principles. You'll remember the Champions Park is in Trocadero in Paris, and it's a celebration on a daily basis of medal winners who receive their medals, obviously in the stadium immediately after their competition, but have the additional opportunity to enjoy that engagement in that moment in a public environment in the Trocadero at the Champions Park in Paris. And following feedback from the International Athletes Forum we had on the 1st and 2nd of October last year, and then further discussions with the IOC Athletes Commission, with Paris 2024, and critically with the Paris 2024 Athletes Commission as well, the IOC Athletes Commission today proposed to the Executive Board that, by exception, that opportunity for reallocation at the Champions Park in Paris be extended, and this was fully supported by the IOC Executive Board. And this option will now be offered to those athletes whose Olympic medal awarding has been approved or will be approved prior to the Olympic Games 2024 by the IOC Executive Board, but obviously have not yet received their medal. So we think that's another great way of giving opportunities to athletes to receive that reallocated medal in the best possible environment. And again, an athlete-driven initiative through the IOC Executive Board. Switching now to boxing, as a number of you will know, in terms of the qualification process for Paris, this is based around, in boxing, the 5 continental events last year, largely using the NOC multi-sport regional games. And then this year we have 2 world qualifying events. The first was very successfully completed just recently in Busto Arsizio in Italy, near Milan, to show the importance of Olympic boxing to the NOCs and the athletes. We had just under 600 athletes, 598 athletes from 110 NOCs, plus the boxing refugee team and 2 AIN athletes with Belarusian passports, over 550 bouts, and that makes it one of the largest boxing tournaments we think has ever been run. That event led to the qualification of 49 athletes to Paris, and again showing the diversity. Those 49 athletes came from 30 different NOCs, and really importantly, there was the direct qualification to Paris of one of the boxing refugee team who achieved a quota place directly from that event in Busto, Cindy Ngamba, from I believe from the Cameroon, and now living in the UK, and was fantastic to see her as a refugee athlete fully deserve her direct qualification to Paris in the ring at that event. Where does that leave us now? We're coming up to the second world qualifying tournament and the last in the qualification process towards towards Paris, and that will be in Thailand in just over a month's time. So far, we've had over 1,500 bouts across the qualification process for boxing, and allocated 3/4 of the quota places available, and those have been allocated to 56 different NOCs. And across the qualification events so far, we've had over 160 NOCs competing. One thing we did discuss at the IOC Executive Board today was also the ongoing attempts of the IBA, to associate themselves with the Olympic boxing qualification events. This continued in Italy with presence on the ground and with a number of media articles and statements creating an association with the event and the boxers there from the IBA. And there we felt that we needed to be, once again, extremely clear about where we are with Los Angeles in particular, and moving forward with Olympic boxing. Again, in regard to the IBA, the decision of the IOC session could not have been clearer in terms of the withdrawal of recognition, and the IBA will not be involved in any way if boxing, and I say if boxing, is in the program of the Olympic Games Los Angeles 2028. And in fact, we should just be very clear about the decision regarding the program for Los Angeles that was taken at the IOC session in Mumbai last year, and I'll read that out for clarity. In Mumbai, when determining the sports program for Los Angeles, the session made the following decision: that following the withdrawal of recognition of the IBA, the IOC has not recognized another governing body for Olympic boxing, and therefore any decision regarding the inclusion of boxing in the LA 28 sports program is put on hold. And that remains the case. Right now, boxing is not confirmed in the Olympic program for Los Angeles. And equally, if we do not have a new boxing body to work in partnership with, one supported by and driven by the national federations, we will not be in a position to include boxing in the Olympic program in LA. We need to be very, very clear on that. And to be absolutely clear, there will be no role for the IBA in Los Angeles if boxing is included, and boxing will only be included, and right now it is not confirmed, it will only be included if we have a new boxing body supported by the national federations, and one that we can work in partnership with. So it's up to the federations to drive that change and to work to create a body that we can work in partnership with, because we cannot move forward with this current situation, and we need to have a partner in the boxing world that we can work with. And it's up to the federations themselves, if they want to keep boxing in the Olympic Games, to move forward with the development and creation of that body, so we have a partner to work with to be able to confirm boxing for Los Angeles. So Mark, I think that gives the update on boxing as well, and of course happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kit. A lot to digest there. I should say, by the way, that we're going to try and let Kit go a little bit early. So if you do have questions for Kit, please indicate as quickly as possible, because he will be going slightly earlier. Right, let's start with the some that we do have already online. From the BBC, we have Laura Scott. Laura, your question, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great. Just two questions from me, please. One on the individual neutral athletes. Was that a unanimous decision from the executive board not to have them parade as part of the opening ceremony, and a little bit more clarification on sort of why that was? But secondly, with regards to the statement earlier today about the Friendship Games, does the IOC see this as a rival to the Olympic Games, and would there be any consequence to participants in the Friendship Games from an IOC perspective?
Okay, let's start with, James, you can take both of those, I think.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, on the AIN decision relating to the opening and closing ceremony, the decision was unanimous. The logic was very clear to us in that the individual neutral athletes will be competing as individuals. And so, as you know, during an opening ceremony, the athletes parade as delegations or teams. And since there won't be a delegation or a team, that was the main reason behind that. There's also, as I referred to before, a precedent that was set in the 1992 Games in Barcelona, where the former Yugoslav athletes who were competing as individual Olympic participants at the time did not take part in the athletes' parade. With respect to the Friendship Games, we don't see that as a rival to the Olympic Games, of course. And I think the statement and the declaration is very clear that the view that we have relating to those games is very much linked to the politicization of sport. As you know, the Olympic Games is not a political event, and it is there for the 206 national Olympic committees of the world. And one of the reasons we wanted the executive board to put out a declaration was to make sure that the position of the Olympic movement was very clear vis-a-vis the politicization that is growing and growing across the world, and making sure that everyone was clear on our position relating to those games.
Thank you very much,
Just to
James.
clarify, if anyone did take part in it, do they stand to be punished at all by the IOC?
That will be something that will have to be looked at in the future. Obviously, we're being very clear with the international federations, the NOCs, but as you will have noted as well, there is reference to WADA's very clear position relating to these games, which says that it's an unsanctioned event. So for us, we would believe that an athlete that would take part in there is actually putting him or herself at risk, not only from a doping point of view, but also from a propaganda point of view. So we would have to look at that very carefully.
Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, let's go to Carlos Groman from Reuters. Carlos,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can hear you, which is enough, Carlos.
Okay, I'll kick it off. A question for James. Will the athletes from Belarus and Russia be actually on site, without going into details of the opening ceremony and the parade, but will they be actually be on site for the event, for the parade? Thank you.
Yeah, James.
Thank you, Carlos. Yes, we will allow them to, we will invite them, and we'll be very pleased to have them to experience the event. The one element that they will not be doing is just the parade of the delegations on the boats in the Seine. The rest of it, we will make sure that they can enjoy the experience.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos. Let's go for Tracy Holmes from, I guess you're in Australia, Tracy. Your question, please. Are you there, Tracy? If not,
Yes, sorry.
oh yeah, I can hear you now. Off you go.
Okay, a couple of quick questions. The first one is, what is the flag for the neutral athletes and why not the Olympic flag? With the team from Afghanistan, to have women marching in it when they are effectively banned in their country, I mean, isn't that a perfect example of politicization and, you know, some of the reasons why other countries may be suffering different penalties? And just with regard to Israel, and I know some have asked whether they should march as independent athletes, the president did an interview regarding the Russians, and he was saying that, you know, Russia NOC was suspended because it reclaimed authority over regions annexed in Ukraine. I just wonder about that because Israel continues to field football teams in occupied territories in Palestine, and whether there are any similarities in that situation. Thanks.
Okay, let's, James, over to you for those.
Yes, hi Tracy. The flag for the AIN has just been released in the press release that just went out, so you'll see that online. And that would only be used for victory ceremonies. Okay, so because of what we've explained for the opening ceremony, obviously it won't be used there, and it won't be flown at any venue or in the Olympic Village. So it would only be used for victory ceremonies. With regards to your point on Afghanistan and the women, I think I'll come back to what I said earlier. There has been many divergent views on how best to approach the problem. We have had many discussions, as you know, with the Afghan authorities relating specifically to the access of women and young girls to sport. The Afghan NOC and the Sports Authority has sent us a number of elements that they are working on within Afghanistan to try and allow access for women and young girls to sport. We're not impressed with what they are sending us, let's be honest. It's not making for good reading. That said, we also have to recognize that the impact, for example, that the team that was sent to the Asian Games had internally in the country, where they had more female participants than male participants, was something that was quite impressive. And that is where we're coming from. We believe that there will be an opportunity within Afghanistan for the civil society, for the population, to be able to see a gender-balanced team at the Olympic Games on the biggest stage in sport, and to be able to have at least some semblance of hope. And that is the reason why we've been discussing with the athletes community in Afghanistan and outside to be able to take that approach. So it is a difficult one, and the IOC Executive Board recognized that, but agreed that the best method to address this problem at the time within our remit is to continue that dialogue with the authorities in Afghanistan, but also to make this statement relating to the Paris Games.
Hi, Tracy. And with regard to your last question, your last comment, obviously we have two NOCs, NOC of Palestine and the Israeli NOC, who coexist with equal rights, continue to do that and respect each other. They don't put each other's existence into doubt as NOCs. And I think more importantly, or very important to this, is in a recent case, the Court of Arbitration in Sport made it very clear, and we can all follow this. It said in a recent award, the ROC's reference to the conflicts over the territory of Kashmir, the conflict over territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, and the conflicts in Palestine are misplaced, as these situations differ significantly from the present case. In contrast to the present case, the relevant NOCs did not extend their area of jurisdiction over that of another NOC or outside their own area of jurisdiction. So I think that's pretty clear, and Kaz, I mean, we would follow that Kaz ruling. Okay, let's go now to Robert Livingston from gamesbids.com. Robert, your question, please.
Hi there. Thanks for taking the call. A question for Kit. I hope he's still there, but could we get an update on the Olympic esports games? Perhaps if there's any hosts been identified, or what the timeline might be. And a second question, I don't know, maybe this is a better one for tomorrow, Mark, but the Future Host Commission visit to French Alps, has that been planned yet? And if not, why not?
Yes, I'll hand that over in a second. I think on the second question, I will try to get you an answer to that, but I think tomorrow probably is a better time to discuss that, because we actually have the reports from all of the upcoming games then. But yeah, first question, James. Kit.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. You're still here, and thanks for the question on Olympic esport. No announcements at the moment. The Olympic Esport Commission, I think, gave a pretty comprehensive update to the IOC Executive Board late last year. The work has continued in exploring that possibility around an Olympic Esport Games, as announced at the end of last year, and building on the announcement from the IOC President in Mumbai. So that work is continuing. You can imagine the number of aspects that have to be considered in regard to those Olympic Esport Games, and even more widely in that bridging between the Olympic movement and the esport community. So that work is continuing, the review is continuing, but no news at this stage to announce.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kit. Thank you, Robert. Okay, let's go to Wakako Yuki from Yomiuri Shimbun. Wakako, if you're there, please, let's have your question.
I think two questions to James. One is the follow-up to the statement earlier the IOC issued. Is it technically possible for the IOC to give sanction, punish anybody or any NOCIFs taking part in a certain competition? What is the rationale behind it? And second, the evaluation panel, 3-member panel for AIN, what is the timeline when we will know the final number of Russian, Belarusian AIN participants? Thank you.
Thank you, Wakako. Nice to see you again. With respect to the friendship games, yes, in terms of the statement, I think I answered that earlier. The sanctions, should there be any sanctions to members or organizations within the Olympic movement, would be something that the IOC Executive Board would have to look at in more detail, depending on the severity. We do believe that athletes should have access to competitions. As you know, this is part of a fundamental principle for us. But we're also putting a point of caution around these politicized games. And that was the reason why the statement came out. Whether we would end up sanctioning an athlete, an NOC, and IF, that is for the IOC Executive Board to take a decision on further down the line. At the moment, it's a point of caution. With respect to the eligibility review panel, the timeline is quite easy. It starts more or less straight away. As I had explained earlier, qualified athletes will be looked at by that eligibility review panel, and we know that the qualifications are ongoing. So the panel will meet after each qualification event is finished to be able to have a review of the eligibility of those athletes, and then issue an invitation or not to the athlete and to their support personnel. One thing that the IOC has committed to do is to update on a regular basis a list of all eligible AIN athletes that have been invited to the Olympic Games in Paris. And that list will be updated on our website so that everyone can see that. But really, the panel will be operating more or less on a daily basis from now until the Games.
Thank you. I'm going to let Kit go in a minute, but let's see if we've got some questions for him. Jonathan Crane from Deutsche Welle. Jonathan, your question, please.
Hello.
Yep, Jonathan, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a couple of questions on the eligibility conditions for individual neutral athletes. The first, probably for James. The first one, the guidelines say that they have to sign a condition of participation form, but will they have to sign, like any other athlete, will they have to sign something extra, for example, condemning the war? And then John Coates, IOC Vice President, was quoted recently as saying, anyone who's prepared out of the Russian military clubs, they're not going. Is that the IOC's official position now? In other words, if an athlete's a member of CSKA or Dynamo, that counts as supporting the war or being contracted to the military, and therefore they're not eligible according to the guidelines. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think I'll take your second question first. If you remember, in the IOC Executive Board decision of last December, the criteria, which were very strict, were put in place, which basically there's two main criteria. Athletes who actively support the war will not be eligible to be entered or to compete, their support personnel as well, and athletes who are contracted to the Russian or Belarusian military or national security agencies will not be eligible to be entered or to compete. So the panel will base their decisions on those principles, and that will be their guiding principles that they'll have to assess each athlete by. Secondly, with regards to the conditions of participation form, the simple answer is no. We will not be asking AIN athletes to sign anything in addition to what everyone else is signing. So as you will recall, the IOC changed the conditions of participation form for Paris 2020 form for everyone to ask them to sign up to the IOC's, the Olympic Movement's peace mission. So that is applicable to every athlete that will be going to the games, and indeed every accredited person.
So has John Coates misspoken then? Because he's clearly saying anyone who's prepared out of the Russian military clubs, they're not going. He's specifically referencing CSKA and Dynamo. So is that the position or not?
The position on each case will be decided by the panel, not by Mr. Coates.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Let's go to Richard Perlman from the Sports Examiner. Richard, your question, please.
Yes, good morning from the California desert. My question is one of each for Kit, if he's still there. What is the timeline for boxing's inclusion or non-inclusion in Los Angeles in 2028? I guess that's the most important one that I wanted to get before he leaves.
Yeah, do you want me to ask your second question, and then we'll get Kit to answer the first one? So then we don't have to come back to you. But
okay. My other question would be for James, and that is, what is the deadline for entries for Paris? When does it actually just completely finish?
Okay, Kit, do you want to take that first one?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Richard. And look, there was no fixed timeline put for that for the next step on boxing. Obviously, the planning towards Los Angeles is moving forward. We were there last week, but there's no fixed deadline. What we do need to see is progress, not a deadline as such, but we need to see progress. Progress again from the national federations, making it very clear that they are supporting the development of a new boxing body that we can work in partnership with and they can work in partnership with. And again, that will not be the IBA. And right now, boxing is not confirmed in Los Angeles, and we have to see that change. We have to see that come from the national federations to develop and support that new body that we and they can work in partnership with if we want to keep boxing on the program for LA.
But it has to get done, what, a year before in 2027, right?
I think it would have to be earlier than that, clearly, Rich, but there's no set deadline or timeline that we've put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Richard. Quite an easy question you've got for me there. The end of the qualification process for all sports is the 23rd of June of this year, and the sports entries is the 8th of July. And that is a deadline that's set by the organizing committee. The IFs are aware of it, and that applies to everyone, and it will apply obviously to the AIN athletes. So by that time, you'll know exactly who's in AIN.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you, Kit, who has had enough and is leaving. So, but if you do have questions, if I've missed you out, then obviously we can, hopefully the press office can deal with them later. Let's go now to Rachel Axon from Sports Business Journal. Rachel.
Thanks for taking the time, Mark. I just wanted to clarify and make sure I was understanding the statement you gave from the Ethics Commission correctly. Is that to say that though the charter may change during the IOC session, that should President Bach wish to continue, he wait to declare any candidacy until after the Paris Olympics? And related to that, is there any sort of Ethics Commission review or recommendation expected on any good governance questions around an extended tenure for him?
So I think this is answering your question, obviously, from the statement, which is that there will be no decision till after the games, and then a decision will be made after the games. If a charter change is needed, then that can be done by a postal vote. I think that's reasonably clear. Okay. Thank you.
And to the second one on the governance, are they reviewing the good governance nature of a potential extended term?
Well, we're constantly looking at our governance, so I would imagine for a whole range of areas that everything continues. Governance is a destination. It's not a destination; it's a journey. So I mean, we would continue to look at all of our governance practices. I think would be what I would say to you on that one. Okay, let's go to Konstantin Varvarik from Tribuna.com.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity. The question is also regarding the admission criteria, but rather about the international federations. And the question is, will IOC sanction international federations that ignore and don't impose IOC recommended criteria and admit athletes with Russian passports who have clear proof of supporting the war, such as federations of taekwondo, judo, wrestling, and fencing? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Konstantin. I think the answer for that is quite clear. It would be a no, we will not be sanctioning IFs. IFs are responsible for the competitions that they run, that they own. We have given them a set of recommendations. They've applied that in the ways, the work within their governance structures. We are responsible for the Olympic Games in Paris, and that's what the panel will be looking at. So there should be a consistency across all sports when people go into Paris.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to take, looking at the clock, 2 more questions which we have up at the moment. Let's take Ashish Sharma from Sport Intern. Ashish, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. Hello. Hope you can see me and hear me.
I can both see and hear you, and it's a lovely vision, Ashish, so please go ahead.
Thank you. So my dog doesn't come in and disturb us. Just a quick one to go back to the issue of eligibility. The Ukrainian NOC has already cited examples of athletes from Belarus or Russia who they feel have infringed those criteria. What import would Ukraine have, if any, with regards to that final decision in terms of eligibility? And can you give us a bit more of a background as to the panel and how they will be working in terms of deciding which athletes fit the bill from those 2 countries and which don't? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashish. For your first question relating to the information that we receive from the National Olympic Committee of Ukraine, but also from a lot of Olympic movement stakeholders, the panel will be looking at every source of information that is possible and that is available to them. So that would include some of the decision making that the IFs will have made. some independent reviews of athletes' eligibility through an independent company that's going to help us monitor the situation relating to social media posts, but also anyone that will send in information relating to an athlete will be considered. And probably our best source of information right now is coming from the Ukraine National Olympic Committee, who is looking at this very seriously. So we've told them that we will look at all of that information. Well, the panel will look at all of that information. In terms of the panel itself, the secretariat will be run by Ms. Bachret Girard-Zappelli, who is the IOC Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, and she will be coordinating the information that will be going to the panel. And the panel will have to look at all of the sources of information and make the appropriate decisions themselves based on the principles and the criteria that the IOC Executive Board has established. Then Ms. Zappelli will confirm the eligibility or not back to the IOC administration, who will then invite the athletes or not. And that's where the list will be updated. And as I said, it will be a constant process because of the different times that the qualification systems end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Okay, last and by no means least, as ever, is Ed Hula. Please, for your question. Ed, I can even see you, so please go ahead.
Hey, how are you? Good to see all of you. A double question here involving ethics and aesthetics. Ethics and aesthetics. First, in the ethics realm, the status of the file involving Sheikh Ahmad, what's going to happen next with his case with the IOC, and second of all, the anthem that was chosen for the AIM ceremony. Who picked the music and what kind of requirements went into selecting an anthem for the team? Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're going to take the last question first, and then we're going to come to where we are with Sheikh Ahmed. So.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Nice to see you. So for the anthem was one that the IOC has produced independently because we didn't want to rely on music that was already in the public domain. If you recall, for the Russian Olympic Committee, there was a discussion relating to Tokyo, which involved a piece composed by Tchaikovsky, and that received a lot of pushback. And so in this case, we have decided to produce it independently. We have all the rights to that. There's no lyrics associated to it, but I hope when you listen to it, you will understand that it's an anthem that at least will give the AIN athletes that have won a medal the dignity to be able to listen to something that's quite uplifting. So that's on the anthem. And I'm no music critic, but it seems to work.
Thank you very much. And on your first question, I mean, all I can say to you, Ed, at the moment is that is with our Ethics and Compliance Commission. So I can't have it. I don't have anything to add at the moment. It's in process, should we say? But I think it will be sorted out in the kind of short to medium future. But I can't really add very much because I'm not involved in that.
Thank you.
Okay, very nice to see you. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Tomorrow is with the president, so I will see you. I'm not sure exactly what time yet, but we would 5:30. We're hoping so. So stand by your beds for 5:30, and we will be back then. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.